Hi guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com, and in this week's ukulele lesson, we're going to be learning a beautiful fingerstyle piece that AJ wrote, which we're going to call Soothing Baritone. So I thought that was an appropriate title for this tune because, as you heard in the performance, it's got a very relaxed feel to it. To me, it's a piece of music that I would love to play when I come home from a very long day of work and I just want to relax. I still want to practice, but I just want to play something chill. And that's what this song is all about. Now, let's talk a little bit about who this piece is best suited for. I think it's going to be the seasoned beginner player. And the reason why is, well, there's actually a couple reasons. Now, half of this tune uses chords that we all know and love. They're the chords that you learn when you first start your journey with baritone. But what's interesting is as you work your way up the neck, you encounter some chord shapes that you may not have played before. And what also comes with that is a new challenge for the dexterity of our left hand, but we also have the challenge of movement. It's a little bit tricky to navigate large jumps up and down the neck. So we'll talk about a few tips on how to tackle that. Now, the last thing too that we're going to talk about is a concept, which is really, really cool to utilize in your playing. And again, another thing that I would introduce at that seasoned beginner level, which is called rubato. Now, rubato is a fancy word, and it simply means this. It means that we don't have to strictly adhere to the tempo. So we don't have to be a robot when we play this song. We don't have to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and next measure 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4. We don't have to be so precise and perfect. We can be a little bit relaxed and loose with our music to give it a natural feel. Now, if you've never heard of rubato before, I would highly encourage you to just hit pause and watch this lesson. Matt Dahlberg taught that lesson. It's one of our live lessons. We do a new one every single month, and he goes super in depth into what rubato is. But we'll talk about rubato as it applies to this song after we finish learning the first A melody, and again when we finish learning the B melody. So we'll learn how to apply it to this piece of music. So let's talk a little bit about the lessons. So in this video, this is going to be the part 1 lesson, and in this video we'll learn the first half of the song. Now, if you want to watch the part 2 lesson to learn the second half of the song, you can do so by clicking this link, or you can go to the site rockclass101.com and do a search for Soothing Baritone. Now, also on that page will be the on-screen tab viewer and the tabs that you can print off and follow along with as well. But let's talk about that on-screen tab viewer real quick. So this is a really cool feature where you can hit play, you can watch the tabs scroll across in real time, you can highlight bars to loop sections, slow it down to any speed you wish. Just a great asset in learning this song that much easier. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump into learning this song, but there's a couple things we want to talk about really quick. The first one is going to be our right hand approach for finger picking. So this song works well with using either one of two approaches, or you can mix them. You can use a 4-finger approach where each finger gets its own string, or you can use a 3-finger approach where your thumb gets string 4 and string 3, index finger gets string 2, and middle finger gets string 1. If you've never done either of those, we do have a finger picking course that you can check out that teaches both of them. It has a bunch of examples, plus it also teaches you just with the thumb. So I'll link the course in the description box below. But either one will work, so it's up to you which one you want to use. And the last thing I want to talk about too is that I'm going to be counting out the rhythms as we play. Now, this is a very simple tune, and let's actually put up the tablature for the first bar. If you look at the rhythm, you can see it's all eighth notes. So we want to keep everything nice and steady. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So we'll count out the rhythms as we go throughout this tune. But if you're new to counting rhythms and understanding notation, I'll put a link in the description box below for an introductory lesson. And we also have a course that teaches you how to read, which is honestly the best way to really understand how rhythm and timing connect. But let's jump into this first measure right now. So here's what it sounds like. It's out of the D chord, the chord that we all know and love. So here's the first measure. Okay, so let's go ahead and break down what's happening. All right, so let's go ahead and make the D chord. I'll put up the chord graph there, but I believe if we're playing at that seasoned beginner level, most of us know how to do this chord shape. Now, we're gonna start off with the 4th string by itself. Then I want you to pluck string 3, then string 2, and then here we have a double stop. And a double stop just means that we're gonna pluck 2 notes at once. So you're gonna pluck string 1 and 2 together. So if we try that first half, we have 4, 3, 2, pluck 1 and 2 together. So let's try that together. So here we go, 3 and 4 and. Nice. Now as we go into beat 3, we're going to follow the same as we did for beat 1, starting on string 4, following up with string 3. Then again we're going to pluck 1 and 2, and end on string 4. So we have 4, 3, pluck 4. So let's try that starting on beat 3. So we have 1, 2. Nice. Now you can probably hear that I'm accenting that double stop. So anytime you have that double stop, try to pluck it just a little bit louder so that it just makes those notes pop, right? That's a way to start getting a bit of color in your playing. Think about it as if you were having a conversation, right? If everything stayed like this, it would be very flat. But sometimes when you're having a conversation, you may get a little bit more excited and the volume raises, right? Or you speed up your talking, and that's another idea of, or an example of rubato, but we'll talk about rubato at the end of learning this A melody. So for now, try to just pop the double stop. Let's try that measure together. I'll play it once and then you and I will do it. Okay, so let's you and I try together. 3 and 4 and. Nice. As we go into our second measure, it's going to sound like this. Okay, so this is a chord that we've probably played before, but it has a little bit of an alteration in it. So I'll put the chord graph up there. You can see that it's an A/D, so it's a slash chord, an A over D. So that means that our D is our bass note. So most of us know the A chord shape, where it's 2, 2, 2, open A. This one's only different with the 4th string. Instead of having the index finger up there, just get rid of it. So you have an open D up top. So you have open, second, second, open. So it gives us a different sound for this A chord. So here's the thing. If you look at the tablature for this second measure, you're going to notice that only one thing is different from the first measure, and it's that first hit. Instead of starting on string 4 by itself, instead you're going to be playing string 4 plus doing that double stop pluck of the 1st and 2nd string. So we're plucking 3 notes at the same time. So string 4, 2nd, and 1st. So with this one, what you want to do is you want to just pluck those, and then the rest of it is going to be identical to the previous measure, where we had 3rd string, 2nd, double stop, 4, 3, double stop, 4. So our right hand remained the same as the previous measure, except for that first hit. So again, we have pluck, 3, 2, pluck, 4, 3, pluck, 4. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to just memorize that right hand picking pattern, and just keep in mind that beat 1 is different for this one, okay? But all in all, very similar. So let's see if we can try this measure together. So we have 3 and 4 and. Okay, so if we backtrack, let's see if we can go from the first into the second measure. So we have 3 and 4 and. as we go into measure 3, we're going to stock G chord. So again, if we look at this on the tab, we can see it's identical to measure 2. So you had that different hit for the first beat. So string 4, 2, and 1. Then the rest of it remained identical to the previous 2 bars. Okay, so again, key thing is to memorize our right hand approach. Pluck, 3, 2, pluck, 4, 3, pluck, 4. Let's give that bar a shot. 3 and 4 and. Nice. And let's go ahead and take a look at the 4th measure. Now our 4th measure, it's going to start out the same, but it has something different on beat 4. So check this out. Okay, so let's take the first third of it. Let's tackle that. So you can see that we start the same as the previous 2 bars. So we're just going to be plucking 4, 3, and 2 out of that D chord. Then we're going to play string 3, string 2, pluck, string 4, string 3. All of that identical to what we did before, okay? Now, if you look at beat 4, you can see a little squiggly line. So what does that mean? Well, if we watch AJ, or if we remember what AJ did in the performance, he does this really cool arpeggiated strum where he's literally going 4, 3, 2, 1, but he's doing it in rapid succession. And it creates this super duper cool sound that is not really achievable by a traditional down strum. So let's do this. I'm gonna play the clip of AJ playing at the start of measure 4, and I'm gonna let it continue through bar 5, 6, 7, and 8. So listen to that very end of measure 4 where he does the arpeggiated strum attack. And then for measure 5, 6, 7, and 8, he does it again, but on beat 1 for every one of those measures. So take a listen to how cool that sounds. So this was a technique that we taught in this finger-picking etude. It's also an etude that AJ wrote. Really, really cool sounding one. And that lesson was devoted to teaching you guys how to do this arpeggiated strum attack. So if you want to learn how to do that, jump into that lesson. I'll put the link in the description box below as well. Now, if you don't want to do the arpeggiated strum attack, that's fine. You can do a traditional down strum, and I'd recommend doing it with the thumb because the thumb has a really soft and warm sound compared to the fingernail. But if you like the fingernail of the index, you can do that as well. There's no right or wrong. It's all choice on what you prefer and what you like. So whatever sound you prefer, that's the one you should go with. So to make things simple, I'm just going to do a simple down strum for this purpose of this lesson. So I'm going to strum down, and then I'm going to follow that up with my pinky playing the 3rd fret of string 1. So I have strum 3 on string 1, but you notice I'm keeping the chord intact, so all the fingers remain planted so that it sustains beautifully. So that bar, not very hard. It starts the same as the previous few. So we have pluck, 3, 2, pluck, 4, 3, strum, then 3 on string 1. Let's give that a shot. 3 and 4 and strum. Nice. So let's hit pause right here and let's do this. Let's try measure 3 into 4 and then we'll go back and we'll do 1 to 4. So here we go. 3 and 4 and. Nice. And 1 through 4. 3 and 4 and. Awesome. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the second half of this A melody. So now we're going to start to work our way towards going up the neck. And it starts with a variation on the D chord. So this D5 may be a shape we've played before. It's going to be the index on the 2nd fret of string 3. Middle is the 3rd fret of string 2. And your pinky is 5 on string 1. We have the G string open. So for this one, if you remember, AJ does that arpeggiated strum attack for beats 1 for measure 5, 6, 7, and 8. So if you want, you can add that attack for this hit. Or if you want to do like I'm doing, keeping it simple, you can just do a down strum, okay? So you want to strum the chord, then we're going to continue with the same attacks that we did before for our right hand, or the same pattern, I should say. So it's 3, 2, double stop, 4, 3, double stop, 4. Okay? So all we're doing different here is we're going strum, 3, 2, pluck, 4, 3, pluck, 4, right? All we're doing different is strumming on that first hit. So let's give it a shot. Here we go. 3 and 4 and... Nice. Now here's where it gets a little bit tricky. Let's take a look at what our next chord is. So we have an A add 11. What a fancy chord name. And boy, does it sound quite majestic and fancy. I think it lives up to its name. So it has a bit of a color in it, and that's what that 11 means. It's an extension added to this chord that just gives it a unique coloring. Now, this is a hard shape to make, okay? So let's talk about what's happening. So it's a stretch chord. That's the first thing we have to recognize, is that it is a stretch chord. That means that we have quite a big span from our first to our pinky finger. But there's also a bit of challenge with the middle finger as well. Now, I've got 3 exercises that I wrote that are devoted to helping you increase the reach of your left hand. I'll put a link in the description box below for them. Now, they're written for the high G ukulele, but you could do the same exercises for baritone. It accomplishes the same goal, right? Which is to help increase the reach of our left hand. So if you're new to stretch chords, I'd recommend checking those out first. But if you've played stretch chords before, let's see if we can give this one a shot. So we're going to start with the middle finger on 7 on string 3. Our index is 5 on string 2, and our pinky finger will be 9 on string 1. And the D string remains the same. So we have an open. So for this chord, we just want to get comfortable with this shape. So just, take a moment just to get comfortable with this. You can see that I'm on a fingertip for the middle and the 4th. And you can see that the index finger is still on the fingertip, but you can see it's curved. I'm not completely straight up on that fret like that. It's got to be curved like that to get this down. So you just want to double check that you have this kind of going that way curve for the index finger. That's the only way to get this chord down. Now the other thing you want to look at too is behind the neck, we have a U-shaped gap. So if I make this chord shape, you can see that I have a little bit of a U-shaped gap happening here. So I'm not hugging the neck, right? Hugging the neck prohibits dexterity and motion of our left hand. Instead, we always want to have our thumb placed slightly above the middle of the neck, creating that little U-shaped gap. So again, I've got another lesson on proper left hand form that talks all about that. So I'll link that in the description box below as well. But those are the things that are going to set you up for success with this chord. So get this chord shape memorized and work on getting everything to ring clear. If something is not ringing clear, it's mostly one of 2 reasons. Actually, one of 3. It's either form like we talked about, or you could have a finger coming down and touching the adjacent string. If you look at my middle finger, I'm not on the fingertip, and what happens is that it touches the 2nd string. So I just gotta pivot it so it's curved and on fingertip, so that note rings out. Or it's that you're not pushing hard enough, right? So if I don't push hard enough, I won't get the note to ring out. So one of 3 things: form, or we need to correct, I guess 2 is kind of related to form. We need to just move a finger out of the way so it's not prohibiting one from ringing, or you're not pushing hard enough. Okay? Now here's the thing that's going to be challenging about this measure. It's actually the transition going from the end of measure 5 into measure 6. If I play that, it sounds and looks like this. Okay, so it's a hard transition. So let's talk about how we go from D5 to this A at 11. Okay, so make the D5. And what I want you to do is I want you to start with thinking about the pinky finger. Now, all ukuleles have fret markers. That's like your guide for jumping around the neck. So unfortunately, they're not uniform. Every manufacturer is different. This one, you can see my first dot starts on the 3rd fret. My second dot is 5. Some ukuleles start with the first dot on 3. Some start with it on 5. You just got to take a look at what you got. But for my purposes, I'm going to use mine as the example. I've got my first dot on 3, next one is the 5th fret, next one is the 7th fret, then the next one is the 9th fret, and finally the double dot is the 12th fret. So if I can memorize 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, double dot, 5th dot, if I can memorize 3, 5, 7, 9, 12, that's going to be my guide. That's going to help me jump around the neck. Now you also need to recognize too that the dot is not just on the middle of the fretboard, it's actually up top here. So I saw a lot of beginners do something like this where they pivot the uke down to take a look at the fretboard, and we don't have to do any of that. Remember, it's up top as well. So use the top as your guide. So go back to the D5, and I want you to lead with your pinky finger. So now that we know the second dot is 5, we're targeting our pinky finger to go to the 9th fret. So that means 1, 2, 3, 4th dot, right? So just start with this. Make the D5 and move your pinky up till it meets that 4th dot, that 9th fret. Now here's the thing. Don't watch your pinky go up like that, right? Instead, keep your eye on the prize. The prize is that 4th dot. Keep my eye on that 4th dot. Move my hand till the pinky reaches that dot, okay? So I don't want to watch my hand and do something like that. I want to keep my eye on the prize. All right, so from D5, we're just going to move our pinky finger up to that 9th fret. When we're there, what we're going to do is we're going to add those other 2 fingers, so 7 and 5, okay? So going back to D5, I'm going to lead with the pinky. As I move up, my pinky leads, but my other 2 fingers follow, okay? 7, 5. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So check out this transition. When I play this D5 and I start to move up, these 2 fingers flip-flop. So that one goes up, that one goes down, right? Because they're opposite. That one's above, that one's below. They flip-flop. This one comes up, that one drops down. So you got to do that flip-flop transition as you move, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this whole time I've been putting it to a simple time frame, right? Just half notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's a really great way to practice transitions. Just put it to a simple time frame like that and start slow. Right? Don't rush. You don't have to be super fast at the get-go. You're building muscle memory in being able to do this transition. Okay? So the goal is to have it perfectly clean and beautiful sustain. So just hit pause, work on that for a little bit, and let's go ahead and jump into learning measure number 6. So we're going to make the chord, and we're going to do the same exact right hand as we did for the 5th measure. So strum, 3, 2, pluck, 4, 3, pluck, 4. So everything's identical. We just have a tricky chord in the get-go. But let's try that bar together. 3 and 4 and... Okay. So I would just practice 5 into 6. Go really slow. 1 and 2 and 3 and strum, and 2, and 3, and 4, and so start really slow like that. Let's try 3 and 4 and 4. Okay, so start really slow. Don't worry about speed or anything. And get comfortable with that before you start to increase the tempo. Now, as we go on to the 7th measure, it gets a lot easier, okay? That was the big challenge. And probably one of the trickiest chord changes in this tune. There's another one that's tricky in the B melody, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Now, for this 7th bar, we're going to make things simpler, and we're going to the same shape we did for D5, but as we go up the neck, E5, F5, G5, it becomes a different chord. It's a G5 up the neck. Now, starting with this 7th bar, we know we have a G5, so 7, 8, 10, and the open 4th string. So let's go ahead and play this. Everything is identical to the last couple bars, so we have strum, 3, 2, pluck, 4, 3, pluck, 4. So let's give it a shot. 3 and 4 and. Nice. Now to finish and end this tune, all we have to do is lift the middle finger up. We don't need it anymore. And we're going to bar that index finger, so to create a partial bar. So it lays flat on the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st string of the 7th fret. So this measure, a bit different. We're going to go strum, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you have a nice way to end it. Pretty simple. Let's give it a shot. 3 and 4 and. Okay, if we backtrack, let's try 7 into 8. 3 and 4 and. Cool, and if we backtrack, I'm going to play 5 through 8 just so you can hear how that second half sounds. And you can see that I flubbed the last measure, right? And if you ever do that in a performance, don't stop. If you don't play the correct notes the right way, I didn't play strum 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I went strum 3, 2, 1, 4, right? So I didn't play the order correct, but I kept the song going. So the only time people know you mess up is when you actually stop and start again. So if you make a mistake at that performance ready level, just play through the mistake. No one will notice. So here's the thing. Let's talk about one more transition real quick, and then we're going to talk about rubato. So let's talk about that transition going from the really difficult A at 11 to the G5. Okay? This is a much easier transition than there to there, okay? But it still is noteworthy of some attention to detail. So go back and make the A at 11. Now, remember how we talked about leading with the pinky? The same thing applies here. We're leading with the pinky, and when we go to the next chord, the G5, all we have to do is go up a half step to the 10th fret. Now, as I go up a half step with the pinky finger, I'm going to reverse flip-flop those two fingers, right? So this is up top, that's on the bottom. That's going to flip-flop, and that will be on top, that will be on the bottom. So it's the opposite as what we saw before. Okay, so this transition's a little bit easier than the last one. Okay, so lead with the pinky and flip-flop. And again, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can put it in a time frame to practice with. So let's talk about that concept of rubato. And I think the best way to do this is to listen to how AJ interpreted it, because he's the one who wrote this piece of music. So we can learn a lot on how he wanted to play it, how he envisioned it being played. But keep this in mind too. How you play it is up to you. You're the performer. You don't have to copy me. You don't have to copy AJ. You can choose how you want to play it. But let's take a listen to how he chose, okay? And here's what I want you to listen to. I want you to listen to measure 4 and measure 8, okay? So see if you can kind of tap along a little bit as AJ plays and listen to measure 4 and 8, and then we'll talk about what happens. Okay, so in the 4th measure, what you're hearing is that AJ starts to do almost a bit of a ritardando. He starts to slow things down. So if I play through the first part, you can hear that I slowed down for the first 3/4. And 2 and 3 and 4 and then I got a little bit faster there and maybe add a little bit of a fermata on that last note before I go into measure 5. So take a listen to that. So I'm going to slow down for the first 3/4 of it, play a little bit faster for that last chord, and fermata on the last hit, and then go back into steady tempo. So I'm going to play from 1 into measure 5, if I play right. Right, so just a slight little slowdown, picking up with that chord strum, fermata, which means just to hold the note on the very last hit of that 4th measure before I kick back into steady timing. So that's a kind of a cool way that AJ interpreted it, and he actually does the same approach for measure 8, except measure 8 is strictly just a ritardando. So it's just a gradual slow down. And you can fermata that last note and hold on to it as long as you want before you kick into melody B. So as you play through this piece, you can do fermatas, you can do ritardandos, you can sway and bend the tempo any way you like. It doesn't have to be only in measure 4 and measure 8. It can be wherever you want. If you want to start out slow and then speed up, that sounds kind of cool. It's a little bit different, but it could work, you know? So just take it and play around with it and experiment a little bit. And you can watch Matt's lesson on rubato. He gives you a lot of tips and tricks on how to use it to make it sound not kind of out of place, but more natural. So you may want to just jump into that lesson. But that's going to wrap up everything for our part 1 lesson, guys. So when we kick into the part 2 lesson, we're going to be learning melody B, which has a lot of cool chord shapes and a few more really tricky ones. So it's a good practice for dexterity playing. And we'll also talk about how he uses rubato in that part as well. So if you want to watch the part 2 lesson, you can do so by clicking this link right here or going to the site rockclass101.com and doing a search for soothing baritone. Now also on that page was the tabs that you can print off and keep for your records, plus the really cool interactive on-screen tab player. So you can hit play, you can watch that tab scroll across in real time, you can highlight bars, loop sections, slow it down, all that fun jazz. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I'll see you in the part 2 one. Take care.